Hello everybody, I'm Kat and today I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite show, Stranger Things. Season 2 of Stranger Things has just come out like a week ago and I've already seen it twice. I have no reason for watching it twice except I really loved the show. Overall, I really enjoyed this season a little bit more than season 1. As a season, I think it's a better season than season 1, but season 1 still has my favorite episode of Stranger Things, which is episode 4 of season 1. I believe it's called The Body. I highly recommend this show if you have not watched it yet. If you haven't watched it yet, log on to Netflix right now and you can watch all of season 1 and season 2. They're both such great seasons. It's such a great show. If you don't know what season 1 is about, basically it follows these 4 boys who are best friends, and one night after they're playing Dungeons and Dragons together, one of the boys gets lost in the woods and nobody can find him. So the next day, the 3 other boys decide to go exploring into the woods, and in the same spot that their friend disappeared, they find a girl with a shaved head, and she may or may not have something to do with his disappearance. If you are currently watching season 1 and you've only seen the first like 2 episodes and you're like, this sucks, it's boring, push through it, okay? I was not a huge fan of the show until episode 4. I watched episode 4. Here I am today after staying up all night and watching season 2. That's it for my non-spoilery section. If you have not watched Stranger Things at all, go watch it. It's great. If you have not watched season 2 yet, watch it. It's great. Bye non-spoilery people. Okay, so we have this really cool intro and we immediately get introduced into a brand new character named Kali, aka 8. And to be honest, when I first saw this scene, I didn't know how to feel about her. I'm like, she has powers too? Are there other kids alive that have these powers? With the kids in the arcade, it felt like coming back home. I was right in my element with them. I was really shook when Mike swore, not even 10 minutes into the first episode. I'm like, this is a new Mike. We have this brand new Mike. He was really angsty this season. And I also really loved it when the worker at the arcade is trying to get a date with Nancy and Mike's like, no, you're not getting a date with my sister. I loved that so much. If you couldn't tell by now, Mike was my favorite character this season, as was last season. So he's been my favorite character since I finished season 1. I can firmly say after watching season 2 twice, he is still my favorite character in the whole show. I really wish they did more with Max's character. I feel like they could have just done more with her, but they kind of like held back with her, and I think it would have changed the season a little bit if they did do more with her character. You know, I kind of wish there was more to her. I love the fact that Mike still called for Elle every day after she disappeared, and I loved that scene in episode 2 when Eleven's in the void and she's watching him and they're like face to face but he doesn't know she's there. I really loved that scene. It was really heartbreaking, you know? I say this with a smile on my face. We finally got Jonathan and Nancy together. This was one of the 3 things I wanted since I finished season 1 over a year ago. Jonathan and Nancy getting together, and we got that, and I'm so happy about that. Then we have Hopper, who's like taken an L, and I really loved like the fact that they were paired up together. They're both fighters and it's really cool to see them interact. When 11 wanted to go trick-or-treating, that scene was really funny when she just appears behind him just as the ghost. And like the whole tantrum scene where she's like throwing books at him and knocking down the shelves and he's all like, no TV, like that was a really, really great scene. I didn't even talk about that. I love the fact that Hopper's adopting Elle, and is she gonna go by Jane now, or are the boys still gonna call her Elle? Like, I really hope they still call her Elle. I feel so bad for Will, like this poor kid. He's never done with the Upside Down, and I kind of hope they give him a break in season 3 and just let him chill because he's been near death twice at this point. The actor that plays Will does such a fantastic job throughout the season. It was so funny when the boys all show up wearing their Ghostbusters costumes and like, you know, the parents are taking photos of them and then they get to school and they're the only ones that dressed up for Halloween. That was really sweet and really funny. Much like the arcade scene, I felt, you know, right back into Hawkins. So then we have 11's standalone episode. And this episode is probably the most controversial episode in the whole show. Not a lot of people like it. It's not my favorite episode, but I really enjoyed it and I felt like it really was necessary for 11's return back to Hawkins. I need a moment to just say that episode 8 in the this show, for both season 1 and season 2, have wrecked me. For season 1, I always cry at the 1 month later scene where the boys are playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then it cuts to Mike and he turns and looks at the fort that, you know, he's still kept up. So then we have episode 8 of season 2, and I was a hot mess. So we have Bob's death, and honestly, I kind of expected Bob to die. He was written in to be killed off, poor guy. But then Mike had to open up his mouth and talk about how Bob started the AV club, and I started crying. No joke, I was seriously crying. And then, you know, they had this whole confrontation with Will, and that was like really interesting how they did that. Basically, anytime Mike opened up his mouth in the last 2 episodes, I cried. I cried a little bit when Mike started talking about his first day of kindergarten and how he didn't have any friends, and so he walked up to Will and was like, "Will you be my friend?" And that was like the best thing he'd ever done. And then, you know, I calmed down because they finally realized, like, you know, oh, we're actually talking to Will, he's still in there, he's gonna tell us how to kill the monster. And that was really cool with like the Morse code. And then we have Eleven's return, and I was so emotional then when they reunited. I was like crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I've wanted for the past year. This finally, like, I got my moment. And then we have my favorite emotional scene, and that's when Mike starts fighting Hopper and he's all like yelling at him like, "You should have told me you were hiding her, this is not okay." They're just like going back and forth, and Hopper's like, "Don't blame her, just blame me." And then, you know, Mike starts like actually like hitting him. He's like, "You're such a liar." And then at the end, Hopper just like hugs him. That scene is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. Definitely top 3 scenes for me overall in the show. And I haven't talked about this yet, but Dustin and Steve. Dustin was really sassy this season, and I loved it so much. He was really funny. There was never not a moment where I was laughing whenever he was on screen. And then we have Steve, and if you watch my season 1 review, which don't, it's really cringy, I talk about how I really don't like Steve, and I really did not like Steve. Like, leading up to season 2, I'm like, if there's one character they kill off, I hope it's Steve. Like, no joke. I don't know how, but Steve is probably my favorite of the older kids. I loved how he acted as a father figure to Dustin. That was really sweet. I love Steve now. I never thought I'd say that. It was so funny, like when he's babysitting the kids. One of my favorite parts is it's just Steve alone with the kids in the house, and he has a dish towel and he puts his hand on his hip and puts the dish towel over his shoulder. He's all like, "Not in my house, you don't." That was so funny. It was really funny watching him change from like this popular jock to basically like a soccer mom. His character arc is probably the best character arc in the show, hands down. Dustin and his mom, the two of them were just so funny because you can really see where Dustin gets his sense of humor from. It was really fun watching the scenes with his mom together because there were, once again, there's not a moment where I wasn't laughing during those scenes. One thing I want to know is what happened to his turtle, Yertle. We never know what happens. What happened to him? I hope he's okay. I hope he didn't end up like Muse. And then we have the last thing that I've wanted for the past year, the Snowball. My favorite ship in Stranger Things is Mike and Eleven. I've shipped them since I first watched episode 4, which is part of the reason why it's my favorite episode, but I've really shipped them since the beginning. I was so glad we finally got this scene. I felt so bad for Dustin when no one wanted to dance with him. I felt so bad for him then, but luckily Nancy stepped in, and I loved Nancy. I haven't talked about her at all this video, but I really loved Nancy. She's strong and I love it so much. And I'm so glad that she stepped in and told Dustin, like, out of all my brother's friends, you're my favorite. And then, you know, you have Max and Lucas, and, you know, they're like off dancing, and it was really funny watching Lucas like practice in the mirror. And then of course his younger sister was hilarious as well. You have this one girl like come up to Will and is like, "Hey zombie boy, you want to dance?" Which I hate the fact that she called him zombie boy. Like, for real, did you really have to call him that? That's not nice. And then, you know, you have Mike just kind of sitting there, and I was like, this is the one thing I wanted, and if it you know, like, this is the one thing I really wanted. And then 11 walks in and Mike stands up, and I was a hot mess once again. I was like crying, like, this is everything I ever wanted. I loved it so much. That scene where 11 walks in and Mike comes up to her and she's like, "I don't know how to dance," and he was like, "We'll figure it out together." My heart basically exploded. Those were all the thoughts I have for now. More are gonna pop up. I know this as a fact. I just quickly jotted down my thoughts. Let me know down below which season you like more. What was your favorite episode this season? My favorite episode was episode 9 probably. Let me know what your favorite episode overall in the show is down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos every Thursday and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!